welcome to the Picnic Blanket Podcast, where we're going to take you on a behind-the-scenes journey to look at how we explored our food sustainability in the KW region through the lens of people care, earth care, and fair share. So this is our behind-the-scenes look. I'm here with my co-hosts, Emma, David, and Sarah, and we're going to talk about some of the main struggles we had with the creation of our story and our podcast. So let's kick it off. We're just going to throw it around here. And let's just start with incorporating multiple themes. Food is such a huge issue. And there were so many different themes that we were introduced to over the duration of this course. And to include all of them in a way that was not superficial, but meaningful, and all the trade-offs we kind of had to make was a real struggle. So I just wanted to hear what some of my co-hosts' thoughts were on like how we struggled with that.
Totally. I think at the beginning, that was one of the main reasons why we couldn't sort of like move on from the idea phase. And it was because we all wanted to incorporate so much. And at the same time, we all had so many different priorities on what we thought had to be included for the story to be meaningful to each one of us. And in a way that the fact that we weren't able to clarify exactly what we were going to focus on at the beginning also influenced us in when we talked about the story. We said like, oh, okay, we got this. But then we would meet again the next day and we would just have a complete different sense of a different story, and everyone would just have a different story in their minds, just because even though we would think that it's the same thing in our head, like just everything was so different.
Yeah, I can't even communicate how many discussions we had trying to just like figure out the little details that, like, looking now, anyways, it was just so funny starting it off. But I guess we were all just so passionate about the course and like so many different things that it was hard to kind of reel it in. And I swear every time David took a shower, he came back with a new idea. And so, yeah, like Sarah was saying, every time we met, we were going in a new direction. So we really struggled at the beginning to like reel it in and like all stay on one path.
Sorry, just to preface that, yeah. So I didn't like have showers with my group or anything. We weren't doing any of that. It was more just I would take some of this information, I'd digest it a little, and then I'd be washing my hair, my long Prince hair, and I'd be thinking about it. And I think I'm actually remembering now when you said the shower that I was thinking about the article of the rubber duck from one of those fundraiser river races with all of the different rubber ducks that are numbered, that went out from a spot in Edmonton, Alberta, and reached, I think, Norway or Germany, I can't remember, someplace out in Europe or whatever. And so they made a story, someone wrote a book about this duck's adventures, and it taught kids about ocean currents. And that's when I was like, oh, we should write a cool kids book. So yeah, it's crazy that that's how things came about. And it was a lot of inspiration. I think there's struggles, but then I also want to talk about the benefits. Like, the team here is phenomenal. Yes, we had a lot of struggle of what was the storyline and our themes. We were hugely expansive. We bit off a big chunk of assignment, and we wanted to attract a huge audience. And I think we tried to do it in a compassionate way. And I think being in a group of people that cared about it, it was easy to bounce these ideas and work with it. And knowing that, we all cared made it easier to push through. At the same time, that also made it hard for some of us when we had certain passions or certain ideas or things that we wanted to include or didn't see, or like the language components that were something I thought of in the beginning, Sarah really related to, and then it was like, how do we even write this in there? So I think there was a lot of difficulties in there, but at the same time, it was fun. And but also, I mean, as I am right now, a little off the rails, I need a group, because that's the other thing for the podcast struggle is I can talk and I'll just go. And so we did have one podcast that was pretty much half done, and I trashed it. So, because of my inability to stay on course. So there was a certain amount of production that I didn't realize was needed in podcasting, and that we learned how to do pretty quickly, I think, as a team. I don't think anyone was the specific producer of everything.
So I think that's like one of the funniest things for me, because we all have like all of these like different personalities, and I can just see that how we're all like just so different, but we work so well together. And so when those things happen, you get so frustrated, but you don't get frustrated at the other person, in this case David, because like you like working with him so much that it's like, well, it happened. But at the same time, I remember when that happened, we were so tired. We were recording 3 podcasts in a row. It was so late at night. Everyone just wanted to like go to sleep. And then, oh, guess what? We have to repeat the whole podcast again. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we had to repeat it twice. Because something else happened after that in the introduction. And so I think that it's just that the beautiful dynamics that we have allowed us to like really overcome that easily. It's okay, it happened, and let's move on and let's continue, right? Like, just because like I think we formed like this like little, like a very like good little group.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's interesting, like the formats that we kind of were exposed to, stories and podcasts, through trying to produce one, we kind of figured out as we kind of wrote each section of the book and filmed each podcast how to do each one sort of better than the last, or at least how to improve upon it. And working in this group, it was, like some of the struggles that we had around writing the story, is like it really highlighted how we all interact with like the food system in a different way. And when you're trying to take this holistic lens to it and include everything, there's going to be lots of kind of points that may not like line up with where we thought things were going to be in our head. And so another struggle that I wanted us to talk about is just the decisions we made about how to be informative without being overloading the audience with too much information, and trying to keep this thing accessible to everybody. Because we did make the decision at one point to be like, well, we could include a lot of figures and scientific sounding sentences. That's possible. We could have scripted it in that way, but we kind of know that it's not necessarily while science does help people make decisions, it's more about maybe the storytelling and the relational piece that we want to take away from this.
It really increased the accessibility. I was going to say, yeah, it really increased the accessibility of it, the way that it was written that way, and the compromises we made along the way to do that. And I think, it was thinking about our audience. And I think that was an important skill that we did. And we had to analyze our audience and take a look at what they needed and that sort of thing. And in that sort of respect of how we got there, I definitely wanted to, shout out to Ben for his amazing project management skills. You can even see in this conversation here, he's trying to keep everybody in line. But but Ben's been doing a great job, because he would present us and say, well, let's all look at this again and do it differently. And maybe let's all take a look at it individually and then come back and let's talk about it. And I think that's something that when we did that, Ben, I remember telling you, thank you so much, crazy project management, but we wouldn't have got there had you not initiated us to think creatively in a way that challenged us, but also allowed us to think independently. So then we were able to identify the integral components to us. And then when we came together, the compromises were easier, versus when we tried to compromise throughout each chapter as it went, there was a lot of difficulty because everything couldn't be seen, all of the components. So I think, it was difficult, but I like the way that we were able to listen to the audience and put it together the way your project management skills were in there,
And I think also the fact that we were able to just build like so many like new skills out of this. Like I think like all of us, like for example, like Ben, writing a children's book, like, like it's a first. For me, I think it was mainly the part of like I had never made a podcast before, nor had I learned how to like edit audio. I'm experienced editing video, but then now editing audio and mixing and matching audio together, that's a little bit different. And like that, those are like also like different skills that we're also leaving this project with.
Yeah, I think another reason why our team worked so well is because we identified every one of our strengths pretty early on, and then we knew we used each other's strengths, right? So like, yeah, Ben was good at project management, so we're like, run with it, Ben, lead us, and we really just let our strengths shine throughout the project. And I think that's really so cool. And we all had like a different part that we played in the project.
Yeah, I agree. And the structure of the course definitely allowed us to do that with the way we were all initially introduced to each other. I think that made a big difference. I think one of the last struggles that we had in putting this podcast together was how to approach some of the content pieces while being respectful of the content's origin. And I'm saying this specifically, how to incorporate ideas such as an Indigenous worldview, which is a really integral part of when we're understanding things like traditional ecological knowledge and how to work in close relationship with the land, and even just ideas around the land, like ideas that we had mentioned, like food as being that which sustains us rather than just simply calories and numbers. Kind of shifting these ideas, how to do that in a respectful way. And we were upset. I mean, I think David, you can mention like maybe why we kind of feel like we left something so important out and why we had to do that.
Yeah, the Indigenous component, like I said, through that workshopping you did over the book, individually, we all wanted the Indigenous component to be incorporated. But for the scope of this school project, we were unable to incorporate that much detail. That would be a project on its own. To be able to do that respectfully and incorporate it, because we are here in Waterloo, and actually just something for all of our listeners to know, we are all in different locations. Ben and I are somewhat close together, but we have never met in person. So that's another struggle that we've been dealing with in this whole podcasting system. But on top of that is that, we all really cared and wanted to incorporate it, but we know that when we proceed with this book as a group further, that will not be on the cutting room floor. And I don't want to call it even on the cutting room floor because it is intended to be there, but we need to do that in a respectful way, incorporating someone who is a knowledge holder and having them provide us with their input and doing it in a way with gratitude. And maybe because we're close to the Six Nations, we have different resources here. But like I said, that would have been beyond the scope of this project. But we've already bit off more than we could chew. And I'm really happy we did, because we saw this big, scary, wicked system of food systems, food sustainability, and the ability to do it in a really big way, and also in a way that's relatable to our audience. We wanted that to be the takeaway, that there's something you could do, and you could maybe use this lens to see the world differently. And that's been a difficult struggle too, is trying to figure out the lenses and how to look at them. That was something throughout the process that was interesting and hard to figure out, because they cross over. There's nothing sectional or categorized about them. So yeah.
But I think overall, even though we had like so many struggles, we are now at a point where we're about to also submit this beautiful project that we are really hoping to take on a little bit further into like our personal lives, and not just leave it as a project for a class. And so I think that's what's really beautiful too. And just to think that now we're at the stage where like we're finally gonna I guess, reach a stage where at least we're going to submit something, and then hopefully also have a lot of great feedback from our professor back that can like continuously help us as we take this project further on. We can just take that feedback with us and
Yeah,
use it.
totally. And it's like, and like David, like you were saying about all the different pieces we were trying to tie together and the different lenses, there was a lot of overlap because, you know, how do you fully distinguish something as separate from people care and earth care, and how are those two not the same in some cases, or fair share in people care? Like, you know, if you take a look at some of those definitions, like where do you kind of draw the line between them? And we're kind of hit with this quote that we got in class of saying, you know, everything is connected to everything else, and so when you change one piece of it, everything else starts to change. And so it really, because food is so interconnected, for all of those different points, minimizing it to 3 lenses helped us work with that. Although it also gave us, it was a good problem to have, I guess is the way I should frame that, is like we were given this great framework to work with, and that's what helped us kind of navigate that challenge. So before we wrap up today, is there anything that anybody else would like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I love this project because coming in, like, before we started the project, we were all just feeling so inspired by this class and by food. And I think we, like, successfully showed the power of food. And I just love that because that was kind of what we were trying to communicate all along, that, like, food has so many different influences. And I'm just, yeah, now that it's the end, it's a relief, but it's also just very satisfying. We created like such a good project, and I'm proud of it. It's awesome.
Totally. And the point to what Sarah, what you were saying as well, I mean, there is the potential for this to go very far, because this is a story that's repeatable, that can be adapted to you know, any region with just tweaking of names and places and things that you identify and, you know, specific to where you're living. This has a lot of transformative power in terms of who picks the story up and decides to kind of tell the story of their food region. And so I think with that being said, that's a great place for us to end off. Thanks for listening to our behind the scenes. Thanks so much.